Hi everybody. This PowerPoint is going to be about phrases, which is the first part of Chapter 3 in our grammar textbook. So, let's look at phrases. Now, words can be organized into higher units. We looked at words in Chapter 2, and these are phrases, something I think you're all familiar with. And a phrase can consist of one word, or it can be a group of words. And here's an example of a sentence that has three phrases. The opposition demands a more representative government. Now, when we're trying to look at what phrases are, there are a few tests that you can use. They can be identified by substitution and movement tests. So, in substitution, you can actually replace one of these phrases with something different. So, for example, it can replace the opposition. You can use any verb instead of demand, and it can be something is a more representative government. And then the other way that you can look at phrases, this doesn't always work, but it's one way to look at it, is that you can look at how well you can move the pieces around in the sentence. A more representative government is demanded, and then you have to add the word by the opposition. And as you know, phrases can be within other phrases. And here we have the sentence that I believe they talk about in the book. They passed the table with the two men. And so you can have the table being modified with the prepositional phrase, with the two men. And we can also notice one of the wonderful things about grammar in English is that the phrase structure will actually start to, you can have differences in meaning. And this can sometimes happen purposefully, and sometimes it can happen by accident. So when we look at this sentence, the ladies passed the table with the two men. And the way I said it there was a little bit different than the way I would say it for this meaning. The ladies passed the table. The ladies passed the table with the two men. Yeah, that's how I would say it. And then, so the men are accompanying the ladies, so that the prepositional phrase is actually modifying the entire clause or sentence. But you can also have the ladies passed the table with the two men, or the table with the two chairs. And that's where the men were sitting at the table. And that's where different meaning from the same phrase. Now, phrases, they have differences in how they're structured and also in their purpose within the sentence or their syntactic role. Understanding those sentence level issues like subjects and objects are very important if we want to understand the phrase. And here we have a subject, a verb, and the object. Mommy loves the kitty loves mommy. Now in English, these things have very different meanings. Because since we changed their role in the sentence, we've changed the meaning of the sentence. We're not going to be doing a lot of this, but I do think it's important to notice the diagramming of phrases. Sometimes when you're dealing with more complex issues of sentence structure, it can be useful. I'd also be interested to know if any of you do diagramming sentences or phrases with your students. And here we have an example of they passed the table with the two men. And you can see that here, the meaning based on the diagramming is that it is the table is being modified with that prepositional phrase with the two men. If we wanted to put it at the clause level, then it would be the exact same thing, except for that prepositional phrase would go up to the clause rather than to the noun phrase, the table. We have also something called embedded phrases, work on the dismantling of a nuclear processing plant at Sellafield. So this is just a noun phrase. Oh, but what a noun phrase it is. We've got work on the dismantling of a nuclear power processing plant at Sellafield. So all of that is, there's one noun phrase, but then there's a prepositional phrase that includes a whole bunch of other phrases, and so on, all the way down to that last little noun phrase, Sellafield. Okay, as you saw in the chapter, each major lexical word class, noun, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, all can have phrases, and there also are prepositional phrases. So that whatever that word that we're looking at there is what we call the head of the phrase, or the main word. Now, if for a noun phrase, the head is a noun, not surprisingly, and it can be preceded by determiners, and it can have modifiers. So we can have a house, these houses, many houses, the little girl next door, all sorts of interesting things. And also, what's interesting for abstract nouns, they can be followed by what's called a complement. So when we talk about the refusal, we can modify that, as in the refusal, to show any kind of emotion. Now, noun phrases, the head of the noun phrase, it can be a proper noun. Oftentimes, the proper noun, the noun phrase is just one word. It can be a pronoun. Again, oftentimes that would just be a single word noun phrase. And then at times it can be an adjective, as in the impossible or the rich, things like that. And in a sense, it's an adjective, although it's really being treated as a noun. That's the beauty of grammar. And noun phrases can be in the role of subject or object in a clause or in the sentence level. And they can take on other roles as well, which we'll be looking at. Let's move on to the verb phrases. And the way we're looking at it using this book, and I'd be interested to know if you have previous experience where they sort of broaden the scope of the verb phrase. Really what we're looking at here is the lexical verb or primary verb would be the head. And oftentimes the terminology is a main verb. That's something else that would be interesting to hear from you all, the kinds of terminology that you choose to use with your students or that you think might be useful. Main verbs can stand alone, or they can also have auxiliary verbs. Finite verbs can show distinctions of tense, so it can be the past or the present, and it can also have the modals. And you can see there's a table on page 43 about that. Verb phrases are essential in order to have a clause. Otherwise you have fragments. The main verb determines the other elements that can occur. And we're going to look at that in more detail when we look more closely at verbs. They can be discontinuous in questions especially. And that means, and this is very difficult for non-native speakers, the main verb is separated from the auxiliaries. What is he doing? The current year has definitely started well. It can also be with adverbs. Looking at adjective phrases, the adjective would be the head, and there are sometimes modifiers. So lucky, good enough, desperately poor. And you can also have complements, those other descriptors that go afterwards. Guilty of a serious crime, slow to respond, so obnoxious that she had to be expelled. And the most important role of adjective phrases is a modifier and subject predicative. So, as a modifier before a noun, an adjective is called attributive. So he's a very sick man. We saw a very good movie the other night. And as a subject predicative, it follows the verb to be, usually the verb to be. He is totally crazy. There are some other static verbs as well. And then we have adverb phrases. And the head, not surprisingly, is an adverb. And you can have some things pretty soon, so quickly, fortunately enough. And adverb phrases are a little bit different from adverbials. Adverb phrases are the structures, whereas an adverbial is a function within the sentence or within the clause. And so the main roles of adverbs, not surprisingly, they modify adjectives or adverbs, phrases. And as we mentioned, the adverbial at the clause level or the sentence level. She smiled sweetly, so it's the whole thing. Although some people would argue the sweetly can really be tied. No, I would still say it would be at the clause level. And finally, we have prepositional phrases. One of my favorites. They have a preposition followed by a noun phrase, or sometimes what can also be called a prepositional complement. And what it does is that preposition connects that noun phrase to whatever's come before it. To town, in the morning, for him. And notice what's implied here, but we don't really show, is that before these prepositions, there's something going on that's connected to that noun phrase. And oftentimes prepositional phrases are within larger phrases. On the night of the first day, in a street with no name, those kinds of things. And prepositions can also have clauses as their complement. It's hard to live in Missouri after spending so much time in California. And that spending so much time in California really can be treated as a noun in a sense. What's interesting with some prepositional phrases is you actually can have an adverbial in front of it, so you can have back to the 50s, down in the South, instead of just in the South. And there are two main sentence level or syntactic rules of prepositional phrases. Again, like it can act as an adverbial. It modifies the entire sentence. He worked in a shop. And then it modifies the noun. Now, something that I'm sure you've heard about, because I certainly heard about it, especially as I was growing up, was the stranded or hanging preposition, and that's when it does not followed by the complement for the preposition. What more could a child ask for? Without the money to pay for your promises, your manifesto is not worth the paper it is written on. And there are grammarians who believe that this stranded preposition is bad style. I actually think there's an argument to be made for that, because if enough people believe it, then it is, or if the person who's assessing what the student is doing, then they do need to be aware of that. However, the corpus data, and remember, we're looking at a corpus-based grammar, so we're looking at what people really do when they use language. These things actually occur quite frequently. And you could modify it. What more could a child ask for what more could a child ask? But in spoken English especially, that stranded preposition is much more common. And that's something I think that we could talk about as to, to what degree do you want to be giving this kind of prescriptive grammar, and how do you make those determinations? I think that's a very interesting topic. Well, I think we've talked enough about these clauses. Please let me know if you have any questions.